And we are live. Good evening, everyone. I hope you're doing well, that you had a nice beginning of the week and all that. I'm very happy to have you there for this special stream, because it's not the usual stream, not doing an interview, we're not doing a news review or anything. It's a special event that we're doing on Europe and youth as part of the Euranet Plus Youth Summit. So I'm going to explain you a bit what it is before we actually start. So to actually three information I need to tell you before we start. So this stream, this event that we're going to see is something that I've done in partnership with Euranet Plus. Euranet Plus is the European network, the main EU network of radios with 15 members across Europe, reaching like I think 14 million listeners every day in 15 different languages. So since 2022 is the European Year of the Youth, in case you didn't know that, we decided to organize together an event where we bring together MEPs, so members of the European Parliament, and young influencers to talk about EU and the youth, and how can we make each other relate, and to make them play a video game together. So in this case, it's going to be mini golf. So that's the first thing. So it's a partner stream, let's say. Second thing I need to tell you, so we're going to, you see me, I'm in my room, my usual streaming setup, but the actual thing that we're going to watch is a pre-recorded video. So we recorded the event itself, so the discussion, the gaming and all that, we recorded that on Tuesday morning in the European Parliament. So what I'm going to show you during the first part is the video that we shot on Tuesday. It's being broadcasted for the first time on the channel, so it's an exclusivity, let's say. So we're going to watch after that the recording of that. But I'm not leaving you. I'm not leaving you hanging dry just watching a recording. After we will be done, so it's lasting about an hour. So the discussion, the event in itself is going to last 1 hour. And after that, I'm coming back live here right now. And we're going to debrief a bit the event, discussing with you, but also I have one of the influencers who took part in the event. So it's Marcos Moscovidis, who is the co-creator of the platform FOR YOU. And he's going to be with me here. We're going to have a chat to debrief a bit the event and continue the discussion about how to make Europe relevant for young people, and of course discuss it with you. So I just wanted to let you know that the event in itself, you'll see, is in two parts. So you have a first part where it's I'm moderating the event, so you will see me in a suit and all that doing the event, and it's the first part is a discussion between myself, the MEPs, and also some journalists who send questions about the theme of European youth. And then the second part of the event, which is the biggest part of the event, we bring there on the event the young influencers, where they will ask their question, we will play the game, etc. So it's a two-part event, but it's a single video for you. You will see it's very simple. So yeah, before I launching the video, I wanted to let you know about these small details. But I think we're done. Like I mentioned, it's a pre-recording, this first part, but I will find you live again in about an hour to do the debriefing with Marcos Moscovidis and discuss your impression and talk about your European youth. So I hope you enjoyed. I loved it. It was great, a great experience. I hope to be able to do it again in the future, and I hope that you will enjoy it as well. So see you in a bit. Hello everyone, and welcome to this Euranet Plus event on EU politics and youth. Euranet Plus is the leading radio network of EU news, with 15 radio broadcasters across Europe, reaching 14 million listeners every day in 15 languages. As for myself, I'm Quentin Deschandelier. I'm more commonly known as the Mepassistant. I'm a content creator on Twitch who tries to make EU politics more understandable for young people, and I'm going to be moderating today's discussion. So why are we talking about youth and Europe? It's not a secret for anyone. The most popular EU policy is one made for young people, the Erasmus program. No one needs to introduce this program anymore. Yet, young people more and more around Europe are being more and more vocal about issues that are
of concerns to them, are important for them, whether it's climate change, whether it's unemployment, and they are actively challenging their national governments, European governments, the European Union to act and answer their concerns. So that's why the EU has decided to bring youth back to the center of European politics. So, for instance, 2022 was the European Year of the Youth, and young people have also been given a central role in the Conference on the Future of Europe. But is it enough? To discuss this, so we invited to this event a group of EU politicians and young influencers to talk about what the EU is doing for the youth and what young people actually expect from Europe, especially as we're going closer and closer from the next European elections in 2024. So to start this discussion, I'm joined by three great members of the European Parliament. So first, Dace Melbarde from Latvia, who is part of the European People's Party. Welcome. Irena Joveva from Slovenia, who is part of the Renew Europe group. Welcome as well. And Metz from Luxembourg, who is a member of the Greens EFA group. Welcome to you. So I'm very happy that you have all of you today with us to discuss this important issue. So perhaps to introduce a bit the discussion, recently, the European Parliament has adopted a resolution about the European Year of the Youth to discuss, to give its opinion on the outcome of this year and how could it be followed up. So, Irena Joveva, I would start with you because I know that you took the floor in the European Parliament in the context of this resolution. So, perhaps could you briefly share what was your impression about this European Year of the Youth?
Of course. Thank you very much also for the invitation. I'm very excited about the questions and everything. I have to say that it bothers me a little bit that we already spoke about this European Year of Youth now, actually in November, because the year is not over yet. So I think it would be better if we talked about it, I don't know, in at least January or maybe a little bit after that. So it would be easier to look back, and see what was good and what was bad. I also emphasized that in my plenary speech. I think that we have done a lot, and I'm sure that we would have done less if this wasn't a year dedicated to youth, unfortunately, because they forget about young people quite a lot of times, and I think we always have to not only think about them, but speak with them and accept their ideas, their comments, everything. We are doing that not enough. But in this year, I think it was better. And I think that we have to learn from everything that we got in this year and also take it not only in the next year but next years, so that we bring European Union and what we do to the youngsters, because we are doing this for them. Just one last sentence. I think that the events that we had are fine, but we still have to do a lot more on the legislative things.
And speaking about the future, so you're right, the European Year of the Youth is not yet over. We still have one more month until the end of the year. But looking forward, what more do you think the EU could do as a follow-up to this European of the Youth? I know that's a Melbarde maybe to start.
I think it's important that we look at the results of the year not only in the quantitative sense, but also what is the long-term effect of the year. And I think that one good initiative really I would like to highlight is a EU Youth Test. And I truly hope that it will be really efficient instrument with a holistic approach, how we will really engage young people in the future policy plannings. So because the idea of the youth test is that we respect and measure needs of the young people in all type of EU policies, and we also encourage national policy makers to do the same. I think that we now have to concentrate that really to have it as a real mechanism, not just to leave it on the paper. The second issue I'd like to raise here is that I think that it's very good that this year highlighted the health issues of young people. In particular mental health issues. I do hope that the next step will be a European plan for mental health protection in education and in the training. Somehow I agree with my colleague that annual year somehow is going to the end, but our work for young people should continue. And it should be and we should concentrate really on the real engagement of young people.
I mean, what about you, Tini Metz? How do you think, we heard about the EU youth test, how to make youth real part of the political agenda, not just like a box to tick once a year. So how do you see it going forward to indeed actually make youth a center part of EU politics?
First of all, if you look back why this year of the youth was initiated, it was really indeed because we were aware that especially young people suffered a lot from the pandemic. The consequences on their studies, on school, on their social life. I always remember I was speaking with a young student, and people in our age or in my age always used to say the greatest time of my life are the time when you are a student. And then this young person answered to me, but for me it was the most sad time because I was really isolated in a small room. So the issue of mental health is certainly important to tackle. And when we think it's also about democracy, we have 73 million, that was in 2021, young people living in the EU between 15 and 29 years old. So I am very happy also that this Charter of Youth and Democracy was released with very good idea. I mean, key is of course education also, to keep the youngsters informed about their possibility in order to empower them, to make them participate really in the political dialogue. And it was already said, not to speak about them, but really with them. And therefore also in the future, we have really to install a consultation mechanism with young people. I'm also really advocating that the year where you are able to elect should be 16, because not to make it mandatory. I mean, in Luxembourg, you have to vote, not to make it mandatory for young people, but to give them the possibility. Because I spoke recently also at the Jugendkonvent in my country with young people. They have great ideas, and it is about their future. So we really need to push, to empower, to make them connect throughout Europe, all the young people. So connecting, participating and empowering, I think that is really something very important, and that we find really also in this charter. And then, of course, reinforcing also the EU programs for youth. We have already Erasmus, and I'm happy that the budget was raised, but now we have also Alma, though, for the young people in an apprenticeship that they can also travel. We have Discover EU, but we could do much more in order to aim those goals, as I said, of participating, empowering and connecting young people.
And so, like I mentioned already, we discussed it, so 2022 is the European Year of the Youth. And we got a question from a German journalist, from the Euranet Plus German member. So let's have a look at this question and we can discuss it right after.
Hi, I'm Antonia from Germany. Why did people in Germany hear so little about the European Year of Youth?
So I will go back to you actually, Tini Metz. So without going into the specifics of the German case, why do you think people have missed the European Year of the Youth, like Antonia was just saying right now?
Yeah, because I did not really hear what
she was saying.
Sorry.
No problem. She was saying, was as young people in Germany heard so little about the European Year of the Youth?
Yeah, so I think it's what has been missing is certainly, okay, it was announced end of the year 2021. So I think for some association and NGOs, it was very difficult to prepare themselves. There was a lot, I was looking a little bit what was happening. So there were 8,500 activities. There were a lot of countries. There were also policy initiatives. There were the budget raising. But I think that we have, and that is my main demand, that we don't make it now a one-shot year, but that we have to change the system. And as I said, it's a question about democracy, and that we need to regularly listen to them and make them more participate. So I think what was missing is maybe also the time to prepare for this year, and also to have a clear following up. But maybe it is, as you said, too early to speak about that we need concrete steps, we need legislation now following in order not to make it nice to have, but to make it really a system change, to have young people more included in the discussion, because, as I said, it's about their future.
And actually, if I'm not mistaken, the Parliament in its resolution on the European Year of the Youth was actually suggesting to prolong a bit the European Year of the Youth until March of 2023, because indeed there was so little time to prepare. It was announced at the end of 2021, so indeed that's not something you can improvise, and you need more time to make it impact a bit more. But moving on to a different issue than still on youth, of course, but moving on from the European Year of the Youth, we got other questions, a couple of questions actually from the Bulgarian member of Euranet Plus. So let's have a look. We're going to cover like other issues that are also very important for youth in Europe, of course.
I'm Luba Konstantinova from the Bulgarian National Radio. I have two questions. Since the start of the war in Ukraine, especially, the effectiveness of disinformation targeting young people in Eastern Europe has been noticeable. Does the European Parliament plan extended measures regarding their media literacy? And the second one, young people in Bulgaria often suffer from violations of their labor rights, especially those of them who do not possess the skills most in demand on the labor market. They don't signal the institutions, they don't look for a solution, but they endure. What is the policy aimed at uneducated young people in this regard?
So maybe we'll take one question at a time. So maybe to cover Luba's first questions on the rise of disinformation, particularly targeting young people in the context of the war in Ukraine, and the Parliament's recommendation on media literacy. Is this something that an issue that the Parliament has identified? So that's Melbarde, maybe.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it's a very relevant question. In 2021, I worked on my report on media in the digital decade, and in our report, we, as a Parliament, we called on the Commission to develop an overreaching media and information literacy strategy. And I'm very happy to see that this October Commission has published guidelines for teachers and educators in schools how to work with young people. But of course it's not enough. I think we have to engage the different type of institutions able to address and engage young people in this discussion. For instance, libraries also is a very good network to work with. For instance, I myself, I work a lot with local libraries. First of all, just to train librarians, and then when they meet young people and organize events for young people, they are more prepared to explain these issues and to have dialogue with young people on that. I think it's very important that journalists themselves, particularly young journalists, knowing well young people, that they are also engaged in media literacy programs, and then they address young people, that they engage young people in their programs, in their debates. So again, it's we need really multiple approach to this issue.
And speaking of multiple approach, like to open up a bit the discussion to the other, what other tools could you identify as a way to fight disinformation towards young people? So we heard about media literacy, we heard about the role of journalists, of libraries. Are you seeing any other tools that can be developed in use or encouraged at EU level?
Please.
Just to talk about also the Digital Service Act, I mean, it was very important also to give some responsibility to these big networks on social media. Of course, literacy is, first of all, that is key. And I myself was teacher on that, so how Pédagogie des médias, it was called, so how to manage. You have to learn that, because otherwise you are really, the strategy, the communication strategy are so subtle and also partly managed by algorithms. So on the one hand, it's also important to responsibilize these digital platforms. norms. But on the other hand, it's really the discussion we need to make also with people and with young persons especially about freedom of expression. So it's really the right middle way to find what do we allow on social media and where do we have to put a red line. And so therefore, and this should be managed by human sides, not by algorithm, because otherwise we have the situation that they censor, for example, if you're standing in a museum and you have behind you a naked painting, then it's going to be censored. So human side is very important, and I think that's something also the Digital Service Act that was voted is very important in order to tackle that. But just to say that it is not black-white, and that it's more important indeed to sensibilize, to have a very critical approach to all media and to listen to different media. I think that is very important, and not only media that you find on networks, on social media, but also that is still important also to read and to go more into the depths of the subject, to hear different point of views.
What about you, Joveva?
I think we as a politicians also have to take responsibility, and we have to communicate maybe more directly or more in a way that young people could understand us, if you know what I mean. Yes. You know, they have to feel like they are like us, because they are, you know. I mean, because everything else was already mentioned, that's why I don't mention it, but of course DSA is very important, media literacy, obviously the key. And I really hate algorithms, and I think that with the DSA we will fight it better. With that. Maybe just to answer also about the other question.
I was actually about to ask you about this second question. So what can the EU do to help young people who don't have advanced diplomas or elsewhere? So yeah, what would you say the EU can do?
I think it's very important to understand that the labor issues are in responsibilities of the member states as such. So we cannot, like, you know, say, I mean, we can say what it's better or to do, but we cannot, like, you have to do this and this and this. So it's important to know that, but I still think that we have to do as much as we can to especially give maybe traineeships, you know, or practices for those who, I mean, obviously not everyone can be educated as much, you know, especially I know the problems in Bulgaria and some other member states like it. So it's important to give them quality traineeships to everyone and to treat people in that way equally, young people. One important issue is also the unpaid traineeships. We fight a lot. Unfortunately, in February, it didn't pass on the plenary, the ban on unpaid internships, but I really do hope that in the next reports or resolutions or legislative files we will solve also that. So yeah, quality traineeships definitely for everyone, because everyone has a right to, you know, step into the labor market.
And to open up again the discussion to Dace Melbarde, Metz, what other possible ways you see the EU possibly be able to intervene to help fight youth unemployment, for instance, bearing in mind, like you said, that in many cases it's a national competency, so the competence of EU is unfortunately limited. But is there anything that you would see possible?
If I...
Mrs. Melbarde, maybe.
No, I think that I think we have to realize that everything starts with education. So it means that first of all we have to do the best we can to provide good education to young people, and I'm looking forward to the new initiative that is European education area, where we have highlighted the need to approach young people from remote areas and from vulnerable groups, and as early as possible we engage young people in quality education. They will be then more mobile in the job market. It's first. Second, of course, it's important that we are able to identify young people which are dropouts and which are without education and without job. And I think that there are two good initiatives also coming from the European Union. It's Youth Guarantee and the absolutely new program called ALMA, which was introduced in parallel with European Youth Year. I'm very much looking forward to this youth program ALMA, which is a sort of Erasmus for young people seeking jobs, and this, as I understand, this program opens opportunities for young people on the one hand to be mobile, to find job in other country, to meet young friends, and in that way also to learn more about cultures, and get different experiences. On the other hand, they have real opportunity to really to work and to improve skills.
And as a final remark on this question, Tilly Metz, maybe?
Yeah, first of all, I think we did already a lot on the level of the universities of recognizing the different certification diplomas that you get. There is the Processus de Bologne, there we have, but we do need to do the same. Again, also talking about other professions. When you, for example, are working as esthetician, sorry, I don't find the word now this morning in English, that it is recognized in different countries by allowing to get experience throughout Europe, and their ALMA indeed is a great initiative. So for allowing not only people from universities to travel, but also those, I mentioned it already before, doing an apprenticeship. And in general, I think this is one of the elements that could allow to make this bridge from what you study then to the employment, to get different experience. And on the other hand, what we have to avoid now is that we have brain drains from one country to another country because maybe you have a better salary there. But I think it's really key that we allowed young people, whatever they study, to travel, to get different experience, to learn different cultures. And I think also on your CV afterwards, this is really an atu. It's really an advantage if you can show that you traveled, that you made those different experiences in the EU, that you learned about different people, that you knew how to manage when you are in a different country, in a different city, where you have to learn a lot.
Well, thank you for this first introduction discussion, because there is more to come, of course. I think it was very interesting because it allowed us to see how wide actually the issues affecting the young people are. We have, of course, the European Year of the Youth, and actually the difficulties for some young people to hear that there is a European Year of the Youth, but also disinformation, the question of unemployment. So it's interesting to see actually that youth is not just let's say a buzzword, it's actually a lot of very concrete issues that affect them. So now we're going to continue and actually bring young people, young influencers to ask you their questions about how to make the EU and young people click again, let's say, all the while playing a little game. So let's have a short break, and then we are going to be right back. And welcome back to the second part of today's event, where we will actually give the floor to young Europeans who have dedicated themselves to helping other young people understand politics and EU politics and other subjects through the content they create, whether it's on YouTube, on Instagram, or on Twitch even. So first we have Karim Hallal Peche, who is the biggest YouTuber and streamer on EU politics in Spanish. So welcome Karim.
Thank you.
Then we have Marcos Moscovidis from Germany, who is the creator of the activism platform EU For You. And finally, Lukáš Fričer, also known as Lukefry, who is a Czech YouTuber. So welcome you all to the European Parliament first, and to this event. So before we dive into it, let me explain how we're going to proceed, because there's a little originality to this. So we're going to have a chat, a nice chat. Karim, Marcos, and Lukáš all have questions for you about what matters for young people and how to make the EU more relevant to them. But we're also going to play 2 rounds of a video game to have a little fun and help the discussion and break down a bit the barrier and have an informal talk. After all, I mean, the Parliament recently said in a report that half the Europeans are playing video games and 70% of young people. So we're sticking to the theme by playing a little game. But it's nothing complicated. It's a mini golf game. All you need is the mouse. So I will explain the game when we get to it. But first, let's have already a first round of question and discussion. So I will turn to you, maybe Marcos, to let you ask the question that you may have to our guest today.
Thank you so much for the invitation, first of all. It's nice that the European Parliament is reaching out to young people and giving us the chance to interact with the members of the Parliament. So my question would be, what do you think, in your opinion, what do young people actually care about? Because I always get messages from them. They ask me certain things. They tell me what's on their mind, but I'm wondering what has come through to you. So in your perception, what is concerning young people right now in the EU?
Who wants to take it first? Dinette?
Yes, I can start. I must say I really appreciated all what the Fridays for Future are doing, all those youngsters going on the street, fighting for their future, fighting about climate change. They want action. So if you would ask me, I think they are really worried about the climate change, the biodiversity loss. Second, of course, I would say employment. They are worried about, do I have a job? Can I live? I mean, we are in times of multiple crises. We lived we had a pandemic. We are still in it. We have war on the continent of Europe. So we have this energy crisis. So I think they're really worried about in general their future. So that would be my two main points: what job, inflation, and climate change.
Dace Melbarde?
I think it very much depends on the region of Europe they've been living. I believe that in the region I live, I'm from Latvia, the young people really feel a little bit afraid of war going on quite close to our borders. So it's one. If we look at the geopolitics, then if we look at Eurobarometer, then every time we see that one of the strong priorities is education for many young people. Also, and what is important for young people, that relationships, having friends, having good time. Then, of course, I agree that climate change is overarching interest of many young people, and I'm happy that young people think about it more than even adults. But I have to add that in our region, I think that social inequality also comes out as one of the priorities that should be put on the agenda of politics more and more.
And what about you, Miss Joveva?
I speak with them a lot, because I answer them like directly on Facebook or Instagram, and I think they really appreciate, like, when they get an answer from a politician, and their questions are like very different, and it really depends on a case-by-case actually issue. But if I focus, because mostly, of course, I speak from young people from Slovenia because I'm from there, and first thing that they want to know, not worried, but they really want to know what we are doing, not only for them, but like in general, because they find it hard to understand, because they feel like we are so far away, and they feel like we are not doing anything, or at least not enough for them. So that's the main issue that I speak with them, when I'm trying to explain to them what I'm doing or what we are doing. But what they are worried about the most, I think that I have to agree here with my colleague Lily, it's really about the climate change and the jobs, especially, I think, the jobs. Yeah.
Thank you so much for the answers.
Lukáš, what would be your question to our guest?
Firstly, thanks for the invitation. It's a great pleasure for me to be here. As we were speaking about the Fridays for Future, I think it's pretty interesting that young people are more active in the last years. They are doing these strikes, universities for climate, and so on. How we can read that young people are more active in the last years? Does it mean that they care more about the European politics, or how we can read that?
Dace Melbarde?
I'm just thinking and remembering that experience before the previous European elections, that we invested in Latvia quite a lot in a youth campaign called I Will Vote This Time. And we engaged opinion makers of young people, influencers like you are, and I think it worked quite well. And since it was a good experience, it's something we continue. We continue to engage influencers, youth stars in a youth work, and in that way just activate young people themselves. Because I think it's important somehow that these opinion makers, that they are able somehow to feel young people just to be active, to show your interest in European issues, in politics. It's cool. I think it's one way how we can explain it.
Irena, Joveva?
Yes, I completely agree. I think the campaigns and the engagement helped a lot, but I also do think that they care more because they are involved more, you know. I think we have done a lot, but also, you know, the social media here is important because I think that they can see or read a lot more than they used to, and they feel maybe even more connected, you know, and they, you know, if they can make a comment or write to any one of us, you know, that they even get an answer, then they, you know, see that it's possible maybe to do something, and that we don't treat them like, you know, someone that we don't care about. So I think that that's why they care a lot, and it's also depending on the national issues I think that they have, because in Slovenia with the previous government they were engaged really a lot because they saw that it's going so bad that they have to do something, and they really, like, the civil society from youngsters was like so up in the previous government that it was so crazy and so nice to see, you know, because they felt that finally felt that if anyone can make a change, it's us. So they really did it. They connected, and it was really nice to see, and they actually continue with doing so. So yeah, the trigger was a bad government, but still, you know, the trigger was here, and now it's better.
Metz.
Just very shortly, because that was already said, I mean, they got the emergency. They are aware that there is really an emergency. And I think young people are just fed up with politics, with just nice words. They want to see actions, and it is really about their future. And it's also kind of success, indeed, also of education and democracy, that they went on the street and that they were listening to the scientists and fighting for their rights. So, for me, the main message would be, thank you, they got the emergency and they are making pressure now, and they are so right.
Thank you very much for your answers.
And to finish this first round of questions, Karim, maybe?
Yes, well, first of all, also thank you for inviting me
welcome.
here. I think it's such a good opportunity to have this talk. So I wanted to link my question with the first answer that you were giving. In the end, it's like tough to explain what you do as MEPs here in the Parliament. So just to keep it short, the question, I would like for you to mention one advantage directly that young people can get from the European Union, because in the end I think if young people know how directly this is influencing them positively, they can understand better how the European Union works for them. So I don't know who would like to start, but
Maybe Irena, Joveva, since you got inspiration from a first answer. So.
No, but I think the biggest advantage they have are the programs that we are giving them, and I think that they are quite aware of them, and I think that that's the most important advantage. If I have to stick with one, I will choose the Erasmus Plus, and also the new one, Alma, that we spoke about before, so it's about the jobs. The same as Erasmus, but for jobs. So that's, I think, the really main issue, that they also see and feel, you know.
Metz, what's your pick?
Yeah, my first would really be the possibility, EU gives me the possibility to travel, to learn different people, to get to know different cultures, different history. So the diversity, our slogan is United in Diversity, that they can concretely, through programs like that were mentioned, but also Discover EU, travel and get to know different people and make different experiences.
To finish, Dace Melbarde?
Just not to repeat, I would add security and solidarity. I think it's very important, again, for me and for young people coming from Latvia.
All right, so that's concludes it for the first round of questions. So now let's actually dive into the game. So I prepared normally everything on your laptop, so you only need to click. So I prepared everything. You all just need to click start. And okay, so now it's loading. Let me know if it's loading on your side as well. Okay, perfect. So I will explain.
I didn't do anything, but it looked okay.
Perfect. So all you need is the mouth.
Okay.
So it's waiting for you. So all you need to do is to click, left click, and then you drag back and forth. So you click and you see like a drag back and forth. You see the little line that shows the strength of it. I'll see that Marcus shot first, and so we have to reach the pole in as little strike as possible. So let's try this. Good thing that my camera is not on because I'm being terrible. So you see, I'm not having an unfair advantage over you. Who here is playing a bit video games or has a history in playing video games? Karim, I see you're smiling.
Yes, when I can, when I have the time, I play video games. I have to say I'm not playing like every video game. I'm more focused on sports, so NBA or football, something like that. But I'm also open to this kind of casual games.
I see that you need to click and maintain.
Okay.
Maintain and then
You see
drag
how much
them.
I play now.
Okay, that's already good things to know.
Yeah, so you need to keep and then define the line to it.
Okay, but I don't even know where I have to. Where is the? Ah,
It's
there.
straight. Yes,
You have
it's.
to hold it.
Okay.
Metz is taking the advantage.
Hold and then you can
Yes, you have
drag
to
it.
hold and then to drag.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
So I have to
Then
go
you
to
release
the
Yeah, it's mini golf.
Okay, I
to
understand.
the flag.
Yeah, exactly.
It worked.
It worked.
It's almost my first experience with video games.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because
I never
I don't play.
Oh, well, even more grateful that you're trying it
You have more or
with
less a
us.
straight option.
My first
The
and
whole?
last video game I played was Super Mario.
What exactly
a
So
do you have
that's
to do?
20 plus years ago, just so
Okay,
you know.
that way it's okay.
But how
So
do
I'm
I
doing
get
good.
out there?
I have to get it.
Yes, yes.
Because I don't play golf as well.
I have to be, I have to be honest with you. I think that I've played more virtual mini golf than actual mini golf. And I say that having played maybe 1 hour of the game before the stream. So
I did it.
you did it.
Oh.
Ah, okay. Now
Maybe not so
I see
hard.
my
A
flag.
bit less, a bit less.
Okay. Yeah,
Has to be a soft touch.
respect.
In any case, like there is a timer. So in 40 seconds, we're gonna go to the next hole. So let's try.
Okay.
Ooh, and you can also hit.
Yeah, the ball interact with each other. So
Somebody
Okay.
helped me, but I don't know who. So thanks.
It's the other way. The other way.
that's European
That way?
solidarity for you. Oh, quick shot.
I think somebody is also helping me there because it's not me. Oh, I don't know. Allez, go.
You have to. So when you drag, you have the little line. It says the strength at which you shoot. But if you want something strong, the longer the line like that, or if you want something shorter, it's more soft. Or actually, we're going to go to
No, but
the.
it's tough because of the strength.
Thank you very much.
It has too much.
Yeah.
It has too
I can be
much
helping
power.
you next time.
Because I play tennis and it's
I think
quite
I
a
did not
different
very
one.
Okay, so now we're going to the next one. It's getting a bit more. Not difficult, but original, because now we have a little thing to reach.
Like this.
Oh, all in one.
Okay.
Um,
How do
Oh,
you
we are
make
still
it more
going.
softly?
Not to push it so much. Yeah,
okay.
just a little bit.
Step by step?
yeah, step by step. It's
I am
better
in
to go like one small,
I did it.
one small, and then.
But you are playing on my ground too, you others.
Everyone is on the same. Is on the same thing.
Okay, that is what I discovered just now.
How are you doing on this one?
I don't know.
No, but
Just turn around.
But how do I turn around?
With the like,
With the mouth.
Like this?
Yeah.
yeah.
Ah. No, okay.
You can.
Ah, je suis vraiment nulle. Hein.
You're discovering it. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean,
Okay.
well done.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe a question like while we're playing to maybe Marcos, Lukasz, and Karim. Like, so you make content that covers politics and on social media. Well
For
done.
once I did.
Well done. How did you tell yourself, okay, I'm going to make content on politics, because it's not the easiest topic to talk about. It's not necessarily the most popular as well. It can be divisive. So why did you decide to go that to cover this kind of content?
Well, in my case, it was because I made the trainship here. I was a Suman trainee in 2018, so it was between all the Brexit stuff, so it was pretty interesting. And then as I studied international relations, still the European Union wasn't too clear to me. So I decided to start in YouTube, trying to explain everything in a simple way and also trying to make it funny as much as it's possible. So that's why I started.
Marcos?
It's a similar story. I was doing a traineeship in the parliament with an MEP in 2018. And while I was there, I was just continuously telling my friends what I'm doing. annoying them against their will, just sharing my daily life, basically showing what I'm up to, what's happening in the EU. And after a while, at first they were just annoyed because who cares about politics? But then after a while they understood that, okay, some of these things actually have a big influence on us, and I tried to present it in a as broken down manner as possible. And this was also happening simultaneously to Brexit. And in Brexit, we saw the lowest voting group was the 18 to 25-year-olds. And I thought, okay, we have European elections coming up next year. I don't want the same that happened in Brexit, namely young people who are affected the most by future decisions, not taking part in an election that is important. So I thought in order to give people a reason to vote, they need to be aware of very concrete things that the EU can do for them or can't do for them so that they improve it. And that's why I started the project and tried to, in the run-up to the elections, every single day, give them a certain reason what the EU is doing for them. That's why the project is called EU for You, or what it isn't doing as well.
And Lukáš, to finish, what was your...
I'm not covering just the European politics.
Yeah, you're doing more actually than politics.
Yeah,
you're doing a lot of things.
But for me, it is important to two things, I think. If I don't really deeply understand something, probably there will be more people that have the same problem. So I can learn it and then explain it to the people. And the second thing is when there is a theme that touches us, that somehow comes to our life, it's something we should talk about, and that's also the European politics as well. So that's why I'm covering the themes I am covering.
Okay, interesting. So we moved on to all four. So we're moving on. Lukáš, there's a little slope, so you need to put more strength. But maybe since we're playing a game, like when we're playing a game right now with MEPs, and see everyone is struggling at his own level to the game, so everyone is more or less on an equal footing. But do you feel like playing a video game with young people, in your case, something that can help talk about EU politics, make EU politics more relatable, make it more accessible, or without like going into let's say a high fellow kids kind of counterbalance where it seems a bit forced or artificial, and so you get backlash from your people. So what do you think about that, Lukáš, maybe? Or?
There are a lot of things that we can use to make these hard themes more popular and more friendly for young people. So also the game can be something we can use. I more often use some humor, some funny things in my videos that helps me to communicate the hard things. But game is also a good thing, I suppose.
Okay. And maybe I will turn to an MEP. So maybe Miss Joveva. So what do you do, like in terms of activity, if you want to make something that a young person can read? So right now we're playing a video game, but what other things can you do to like connect with them and say, oh, you see, I'm a real person like you, and we can do something that you appreciate as well.
I think that's the most important, actually, thing here, to show to everyone that we are also, human, real persons, and also to maybe get out of our comfort zones sometimes. So this is, I think, quite a lot out of our comfort zone.
Yes.
But it's nice, to see, for them to see that we're not always like, I don't know, in the offices, like sitting or just speaking some things that they don't understand. So I think it's very good also to communicate also with them in this way. But what I do, I was a journalist before for 8 years, so maybe that's an important fact. But I always say that if you cannot explain something, it doesn't matter if it's complicated or not, but everything is complicated here in the European Union, almost. If you cannot explain it in 1 minute, so that everyone can understand, like, I don't know, young people, but also older ones, then you don't know a lot about it, or you didn't prepare enough about it. I know, because I had to do it every single day as a journalist, and I had only 1 minute. And it was really, it was hard, but it could be done. And I saw then that it can be done, so I'm trying to do my best also here to not simplify, but just to explain to them in maybe a simple way possible. You also mentioned humor. I also try to, when I write something, to make it a little bit humorous or use an emoji, but not a lot. But you know, just to have a balance that it's not always so serious and complicated, but it's really real stuff that that they can relate to.
And what about you, for instance, Dace Melbarde? What do you do, for instance, when you need to reach out to young people and talk about what you do in the Parliament?
Mm-hmm. Actually, since I became a member of European Parliament, I established my permanent forum for young people already since 2019, called With Strong Roots in Latvia and Europe. So, and it includes youth leadership activities and workshops on European issues. And I really try to combine skills development with knowledge about EU, and the skills development on leadership. It's something that is very attractive for young people. They are very open to have such type of trainings. And then you add also the knowledge about Europe. And this way that it works quite well. And when you organize such trainings and seminars, you have to be ready to adapt to methods which are more like familiar for young people. So you have to be ready to sit on the floor and to talk with young people, to eat pizzas with them, to drink cola. I don't like, but so
play mini golf.
Yeah, actually.
So here I'm going to use my difficult responsibility as a moderator. I think that time is passing, so I'm going to cut short like this gaming session, and we're going to go back to the question of our influencer guest here. So maybe Marcos, we started with you last time. So let's do it with us. Karim, what would be your question to our guest?
Yeah, I'm wondering, as we are talking about your personal side and connecting with young people, I've always wondered, MEPs, I mean, you have a tough job in a lot of senses, but also if you have to explain it. So I guess you have or children or friends that are young, or I don't know, neighbors that are between 18 and 20 something. So how do you explain at some point when you are chatting, I don't know, in the lift or whenever, when you are chatting about your job and they ask you, hey, what about you? I mean, what do you do? How do you explain that simply?
In 1 minute.
2 minutes, maybe.
Yes, I have indeed a daughter, 26 years old, and of course we have a lot of discussion on my work. She has a restaurant. She's working in a very different domain than I, so we have very lively exchanges. But I have also a very young team around me, and it's very good to listen to them, to have them. And if I'm asked what are you doing, I say I have really the honor and the luxury to really fight at the European level for the causes I really believe in, and that's for more than 400 million people. So I really consider it as an enormous honor to fight for these causes, be it on health, animal welfare, etc. So the subjects that really close to my heart. And indeed, one of our main job is to make it understandable to a large public. I think that is even our job. I mean, the scientists can use scientific word, and I'm really appreciating discussion with young people on eye level. And I think also in my team, I always say everybody has her or his role to play, but we are a team, and that's it. So I really like to listen, and we can learn really a lot from each other.
Irena, Joveva?
Yes. My child is 1.5 years old, so she doesn't count here. But you know, when I speak with the young people, I'm young, but not as young as them, because when I listen to them, like from 18 to 20 or 20 something, I'm like, what? I mean, I thought I was young, and then I'm listening to them. It's 10 years plus, but still, you know, they are it's so different times from my times. So I try to adapt, you know, and I try to answer to them to every single question, but they really don't have no complicated questions. They just want to know what's your typical work day, and then I explain, you know, and I don't go to details if they don't want to. I just answer, and then maybe in the next question or the next day or whatever, they will also maybe look for something on the internet by themselves, because they will feel engaged, and then they will ask also some more content-related questions. So I just adapt to them and answer and try to answer, as I said, in as simple way as possible. And just for them to know that I'm nothing more than them. I was elected, so I'm not here because of me, but I'm here because of them and for them. So that's what I always try to do and say.
Dace Melbarde?
I have a daughter of 16 years old, so it's the right age to speak about young people. What I do, I bring her with me in a lot of activities. I really engage her. So, and actually during COVID, she was like, for me also as a sample what's going on with young people. So actually, and through my daughter and her friends, I noticed, and I also started myself to speak about health issues of young people. So yeah, to bring with me, to engage in my activities, I think it's the best way how to make her understand what I'm doing.
Lukasz, what would be your question?
Yeah, I would stick with the young people and themes that they are really interested in, like, for example, climate change and so on. Sometimes it could be pretty desperate to make some strikes, some protests and so on, and don't see any result in the end. What can young people do, really do at the European Parliament? Is there any way that they can participate more than just go to some protest or on some strike?
Metz?
Yes, I can maybe start. So first of all, I think it's very important that they know that the people they are in the future, or I hope as soon as possible, be able to vote, to analyze a little bit what are they really standing for. So, or analyzing also what are they voting for. So it's again, information literacy is very important, so that they get the information, but that they ask also to meet with politicians and tell me openly what are you fighting for when you are at the council as a minister, so to understand better. But at the European level, we have also the European Citizens Initiative. So you can start really like a European petition when you are young. You can come, of course, to visit. And I think we as a European Parliament are one of the most transparent parliaments of the world. So you can come and listen. I don't know how it's in other political groups, but you can come and listen what are our discussions at the Greens FR group. You can come and listen to a committee meeting. You, of course, can listen to the plenary, and it's also streamed online. So information is really key. And at the European level, there are different entrants where you can really see what is really happening there. Of course, visits are always welcome, really, to see on the ground how is our daily life here and what are also our competence, what we can decide and what not.
Dace Melbarde, you want to answer?
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that it's more efficient to join forces with other young people and to be part of NGO. I think it's a one gateway how to engage more purposefully in setting up the EU agenda through young people, so European Youth Forum, for instance. And I think the second issue I'd like to raise here is, if you want to be active and really to influence something, you have to be ready to learn a lot. It's not enough just to have your knowledge at school. You have to be ready to learn additionally. So and there are so many opportunities online now provided by so absolutely magnificent universities of the world, and many of these opportunities are free of charge. So, language. I think that learning foreign languages, it's very important. If you want to be active citizen of European Union, you have to know language. Just more.
I completely agree with both of you, but maybe just to add, I think that every one of us should have at least one trainee. It's important, paid, obviously, just to be exact, but I think it's important for them to come here and, to see from first hand, not just to hear about it and, listen to us or whatever, but to come here and see what actually we are doing and what can also they do, to contribute. Because, I don't know, I will speak for myself, but my trainees are not making me coffee or bringing me some purses or whatever, They really do stuff that also my assistants do. And I think it's important that we treat them like people that are capable of doing it, because they are, you know, and we shouldn't look at them as, I mean, yes, they are young, but they can give a lot. I mean, they can teach also us a lot. I agree that they have to teach a lot, but they can also teach us really a lot.
And final question, Marcus?
Yeah, my question is related to young people in Europe, and I'm specifically saying Europe and not just EU because I'm looking beyond the EU borders. So Croatia is a member state that joined in 2013. I have a lot of family there and roots in the country, but I also have a lot of friends in other candidate countries, and many of them have been looking to the EU with great hopes for many, many years, not just young people, of course, but since this is the topic, we're focusing on them. How do you tell young people that are living beyond the EU borders, but in candidate countries or aspiring countries, that the EU is still for them and cares for them? Because a lot of them are growing more and more negative toward it because they feel like they're being failed by it. They only see stalled processes and no real progress. So what do you as MEPs think about this?
Monsieur?
I can maybe start because my parents come from North Macedonia, so I know a lot, and I also have family there. It's very hard to explain them. I mean, it's getting harder and harder, really, because they are so angry and annoyed and depressed, and they really don't actually care anymore, you know. So I'm honest with them. I say, I mean, we in the European Parliament most of us, you know, we also have some MEPs that have different opinions, but they are a minority. So, you know, the majority in the Parliament really does everything in our power to help them and to give them what they deserve. But unfortunately, it doesn't depend on us. You know, we have the council here and the veto issues and everything, and it's really frustrating also for us. So I'm just honest with them, and I really understand. I really do, because you know they are my people, they are my family. But I still want to give them, you know, also honesty, but also some optimism, you know, because I try to explain to them that we care, you know, not everyone is like, we don't care, but we here in the Parliament, majority of us, and majority of the European Union as such actually, cares about them. And we are trying to do everything that is in our power to help them in any other way. And now I think things are slowly moving, finally, and it's really important for them to know also that something is going on, and it's probably going to be a long way, but it's happening. So yeah, honesty is the key here, I think.
Dace Melbarde?
As far as I know, Erasmus programs are open also for young people outside Europe. So it's the first thing I would say then, that use already existing experiences. Second issue, I would encourage young people to become more active themselves and to become future politicians of their countries and to change their countries to open opportunities to become members of European Union.
Sounds very good. And Tilly Metz, maybe to finish?
Yes, in general, I think it's very important to see the state where we are right now, where we have this multiple crisis. I said already in Ukraine, the invasion of Ukraine. So it's also a topic as of course, for the Ukraine too. And I think it's very important to say to the people, you are completely right, and we're fighting with you. We need those countries that are candidates, that are working to be member of the European Parliament since long years already. And we have really to consider them and to take it serious and to advance. But right now, I think with this multiple crisis, it's also, I mean, we have this war that is very important. But in general, we have to say that the EU has also missions and competences outside the EU. Myself, I'm now chairing the relations with Central America. So the treaty foresees also that we have a mission to do outside the EU to help in building up democracies, to have this exchange again on eye level with those other countries, to be peace builders also outside the EU. So that's in the treaty. It's just not something nice to have. It's really in the treaties. It's one of our missions also to be active outside the EU.
Well, thank you for that. So I promised a second round of game. I'm looking at the time, so I will I made a promise, so I'm going to respect it. I'm going to launch a shorter game, so it's only going to be 3 all shorter, 3 minutes max, and at the same time we're going to go into a last round of discussion with maybe a question that will be more directed to our influencer guests there. You are there, you're the young people. I don't consider myself old, I'm a bit like Miss Joveva, but younger than me, I have to accept this reality. What advice would you give, or would you give to the MEPs that are there and MEPs in general to help them reach out to young people, make what they do more appealing, more interesting for people, and especially as, like I mentioned in the introduction, we're getting closer to the European election in 2024. So getting young people to vote is going to be ever more important. So what would be your advice to them? So Karim, maybe?
Yeah, I would say definitely. I mean, I think this is always repeated in this kind of questions, but I would say social media. I think that's the easiest way and a really powerful tool to reach young people through the most serious content or the most sporadic and funny content. So you can make stories in Instagram, you can make some tweets, you can tell people what are your thoughts about something suddenly whenever you want. So I think that's a really good way to connect with young people. And also, if you want to motivate them to vote, also not only to say we have to vote, but to give some reasons, and not only for voting, but what has happened during these 5 years when you have maybe or haven't voted. So I would focus maybe the message on that way, and always through social media.
Lukasz?
I have to completely agree. I would just repeat it. Social media, and also show what really can European Union do for young people, and how does the EU influence their lives.
Marcos.
I would just add to be as concrete as possible, and don't underestimate the knowledge young people have also, on the one hand, and on the other hand, when I say concrete, I mean things like give them examples when votes were very, very tight, and when really a few votes for MEPs decided the outcome of something, so that they have a reason to vote. Because if you tell them, because of 2 members of parliament that were voted in, a whole policy changed in one direction or another, it shows them that it makes sense to go out to elections, it makes sense to go campaigning. So just be concrete and don't underestimate their knowledge.
Yeah.
So is that good advice, do you think, Metz, that you can get behind this? I'm sure that you're doing already a lot to be on social media and try to be appealing, but...
If I can tell about a personal experience, first of all, I totally agree on what was said by all of you, but I had a discussion with my team, shall I go on TikTok or not? Because at the beginning, I was in favor, strangely, and my team said, no, that's not serious, you cannot dance on the table, what do you imagine, TikTok? And then I have one person, because it's important to have somebody really taking care about your communication, because you can work a lot, but if you don't communicate about your work, it's lost, and especially for young people. So we win, even though we were in the minority. So now I'm on TikTok, and I think it's very challenging to try to make a political message, and even to say also to very young people why politics is important and concerns us all. And politics starts at home. It starts as soon as you live in a society, in a community. And I think it's very challenging, but I do definitely not regret, because you can make also pass messages on a very funny way. And so that would have been your question to you if I would not have been on TikTok. Now, what do you think about politicians? Should they be on TikTok or not? But as I understand you, it would be rather yes. But I would be curious how you see politicians on TikTok.
It's a risky question. Because usually we think automatically TikTok is only dances, and I would say the great majority of the content is people dancing and then putting some messages with the rhythm. But I think maybe you can make, I don't know, a 30 seconds video with a lot of cuts of your day in the plenary. I think that's something that some MEPs have already done. Or maybe, I don't know, to share some thoughts that you have concerning a law you are working in. Something like that maybe could be good in TikTok, also with some music and some rhythm. Otherwise, people are not going to engage probably.
So I'm going again to have to use, unfortunately, my responsibility as a moderator. We're reaching the end. game-wise, it's perfect. We finished right in time. So I'm going to do a short conclusion. But again, it's just the beginning of a longer conversation. I mean, I'm sure that you will exchange outside the scope of the event. So first, I want to thank you all for agreeing to participate to this event on European youth and agreeing to come to play a video game. I know it's something that you do every day in the European Parliament. I think there was like very interesting conversation, very interesting points that were made both from the side of MEPs, but also good topics brought by our guest influencer. I would also, like as myself, would like to thank Euranet Plus for organizing this event. As for the audience, don't forget to follow Euranet Plus, to follow our guest MEPs, our guest influencers, and maybe myself if you like it. But again, like I was mentioning, this is just the beginning of the conversation. European youth is something that is more and more important as we're getting closer to 2024. It's going to be a challenge for everyone there, whether you're an influencer, whether you're a politician, to get out there and get people to actually cast a vote for 2024. So again, thank you all for coming, and I hope you enjoyed the experience.
Totally. Thank you very much for
You're
inviting.
welcome.
Thank you.
And we are back. Hello. Oh, I'm cutting the video. Sorry. There we go. So, I hope you enjoyed the content, the event, and all that. I'm being joined by Marcos Moscovitis, who was one of the guests on the show. So, welcome, Marcos. Thanks for taking the time to come back again to discuss about it. So, chat, of course, like give us like already your impressions and all that in the chat, so that I can see if we did good. But Marcos, like maybe to start discussion, what was your impression like doing the event? Were you happy with it? The discussion that you had with the MEPs? What was your impression?
I really enjoyed it, and before I get into the event, I wanted to say thank you once again for the organization invitation. I really, really appreciate it. It was fun. It was something else, you know. Of course, it's not something that MEPs do every day, so you can't expect them to be top-performing gamers right away. But I think despite the fact that this is not something that they would usually do, we managed to have a pretty good exchange. Everybody managed to ask their questions. We got decent responses. And yeah, I'm happy. I can't complain at all. The only thing is maybe that for next time, it wouldn't hurt for the MEPs to at least play the game once, so we don't lose any time with like preparation, you know, explaining them how things are done. But it is what it is. It also adds a spontaneous character.
Yeah, I mean, Andros in the chat is saying that it was fun experiment. The quality was pretty good. Was also pretty good. I mean, to be fair, we were like we were in the European Parliament. We were in the TV studios of the Parliament. So yeah, it was top quality. I mean, there was like 7-8 cameras in the studio. I mean, you saw there were screens everywhere. There was a crew of the European Parliament like handling all the regie, etc. So yeah, it was like top tier professional work from there. So on that, also that's a level of quality we never seen on the channel. But don't expect that every day, guys. Huh? I have to manage your expectation. We're not doing that every day. But yeah, no, the quality was great. Yeah, there was Indus also saying that there was a bit of awkwardness, but I mean, sometime, of course, in this kind of thing, I mean, like we mentioned, I mean, MEPs, I think it was Irena, Joveva said that, yeah, we're completely out of our element. We are not in the comfort zone, but I think that's what makes it interesting. I mean, to see MEPs in not a situation, in an environment that they are used to it, and at least at the very least making the effort to do that. So I think it was also commendable from the MEP to take a risk, because I mean we have to be honest. When you go to many MEPs, you tell them, okay, you're going to be on Twitch and you're going to play a video game with influencers. I mean, that's a lot of potential red flags for MEPs. So I think it was courageous of them to agree to come. So.
And I can add something to that, because I'm also doing interviews with MEPs on my channel every now and then. Usually what happens quite often is that MEPs ask you in advance, what kind of questions are you going to ask? What kind of content are you going to cover? This was not the case for us. So A, they were playing the video games, which they didn't know. And B, they didn't know what kind of questions they were going to ask. So I'm quite happy that 3 people were brave enough to show up.
Yeah, I mean, they play the game quite well. The game in the sense that okay, they said it's gonna be something that we're not doing every day, but okay, we're going to do it, and that's gonna go well, and it went well, I think. I mean, afterwards we discussed a bit with the MEPs when the event was done, and they were all quite happy, I think, with the experience. But let's go back a bit to the topic. So the whole event was about Europe and youth. So like from what the MEPs said, like, is there something that stuck a bit with you regarding their comments or what they said? Whether it was on the part where you were at, where you were asking the question, or the part before, like the first part where I was with them and the question from the journalist.
Yeah. So one thing that made me happy is to get an understanding that they are actually in contact with youth, that at least MEP Joveva and Metz were saying that they are in constant exchange on social media. So that's good that there is some type of connection, and it's not just young people hoping to maybe get some information through newspapers or whatever. They're actually talking to them directly and they're responding. So this is a really good development. One thing that was a bit upsetting to me was actually the answers to the second question, where I asked about what kind of things would you tell young people beyond the EU, because I feel like 2 out of 3 questions were really not related, and 2 out of 3 answers were not related to my question at all. It was just very generic, you know. Mm-hmm. But it is what it is. You're not always going to get your questions answered directly, mm-hmm. and I think this is an answer as well, you know. Yeah, of course. And another thing that the MEPs, I mean, and that's something also I was positively not surprised, but pleased that they brought that up, is when we were asking, okay, what are the concrete issues that people are talking to you about, and they had like pretty good and pretty concrete ideas. Someone would say, okay, there's the question of employment. There was 2 MEPs who said, okay, there's the question of mental health. In the context, we just came out of 2 years of pandemic, and young people were not exactly it was not an enjoyable time for many students who were like stuck in small apartments for a year and a half. So I think it showed a bit that they like they were not out of touch, like they were still able to understand a bit like what are the real issues. And I also like that we actually for most of the event we really stayed away from the very like high level. Oh yeah, youth is important. Youth is the future, and we went actually into pretty concrete stuff. Talking unemployment. We talked about Erasmus. We talked about mental health. So I think it was good that we didn't go too much into buzzwords. Like that's something that we avoided, and I think that was pretty good. I mean, it's good that the MEPs show that it's not just buzzwords. It's not like, oh yeah, youth is important. Vote for me. See you in 5 years. Yeah, definitely. And what was also nice is that, for example, things that were spoken about in the Eurobarometer were mentioned, because often you have the feeling that such statistics are just being done for the sake of being done, but they're not really used, you know. So it was good to hear that they are actually looking at what kind of results do EU officials get when they do polling, like what topics are important for you, what is not important for you, and they have it on their radar. And one thing that struck me very, very positively was the whole vibe when it came to communication, because they were repeatedly saying how they use social media. They asked what kind of suggestions we have, and they said that they're open to this type of interaction on social media. So it's nice that they have an understanding that this is the future, that young people are realistically not going to look up their office emails and then write a lengthy letter, but they are just going to shoot them a text on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. And it's good that they understand it. So I have a comment in the chat. Let me know. Tell me if you agree with that. So when we said okay, we didn't have a lot of buzzword, and so Busmati is saying in the chat, yeah, but mentioning the issue in just barely above buzzword level, because as long as they can't show that they are working on something that will actually help, is just talk. So do you agree that in the end, like, it was mostly just talk, or it shows still that they're doing stuff, and at least they're involved in things? Yeah. I mean, one thing that needs to be said is that they're all working on different committees. So that said is that, of course, youth topics are not what their everyday work entails. They're working on it indirectly because it's part of the overall results that will come out of their committee work, but it's not really their main focus. I think they were mentioning more general EU programs such as ALMA or Erasmus Plus, because this is what the EU as a whole is providing, but it's not what they're doing. For example, Irena Joveva was a bit more concrete when she spoke about youth beyond the EU, because she's sitting on this interparliamentary committee with North Macedonia. So it's a topic that she's actually working on. But I don't think that you can blame them for not being as concrete if it's not a topic that is not part of their portfolio.
Yeah, because I mean, just to give you an idea of like the MEPs, so till Metz we had on the channel already, although the interview was in French, so maybe not all of you watched it, but like you had within the group, you had Irena Joveva, who was actually in the cult committee, so she was dealing a bit more with youth issues, so that's why she was a bit more on youth policy and all that. In the introduction, I say, oh yeah, you spoke in the plenary about the European Year of the Youth, so she was able to be more concrete on that because that's something that she actually worked on. But like if you take Tilly Metz, so the Green MEP, she's working in the Environment Committee, so like youth policy is not exactly the core of the NV, even if I mean there's an impact when you talk. She talked about Friday for Future, etc. So it's indirectly something that is relevant for young people, but it's not youth policy because that's outside the scope of NV. But in the end, like every kind of policy, you can relate it to some level to the EU, like Dace Melbarde, so the DPP MEP. From Latvia, she worked on disinformation, so same thing. So even if they're not able to show, oh yes, I did this policy for youth, since youth is one dimension of every policy, as long as they are aware of it, that shows that okay, that's something that they have on their mind when doing their work, and say okay, that's like they were talking about the youth test at some point. It's something, even if they can't say okay, I did a program for young people, no, but in the policy that they are doing, whether in environment, whether in disinformation, that's something that they have on their mind and that they take into account. So you can't you can't expect MEPs to always show you, okay, here's the text on youth that to prove that I did something for you. It's something a bit more transversal, I think. What else is?
I mean,
go ahead, Marcos.
Okay. No, I just wanted to say, as I mentioned earlier for the second question, I definitely think there could have been more substance in the answers. Yes, absolutely, because this is a general question that you can be more concrete on. But overall, it's just important to keep in mind what they're working on and what they're not working on without wanting to defend them. It's just a general idea about the work of MEPs.
No, of course, and like Andreas is also saying in the chat that like also, especially when we're talking about youth policy, like a number of things that can affect young people are not European competencies. If you talk like something that a couple of the MEPs said when we're talking about unemployment, they say, yeah, the problem is that many of these things are national level kind of policy. We can support, we can encourage member states to do something, but ultimately that's up to the member state. Even on education, yeah, okay, we have the Erasmus program, but the education is a very national competence. The EU actually cannot do. It's not the EU is going to decide. Okay, what do you learn at school? They definitely not. So, on when you come to youth policy on many issues, it's the EU is more in a supporting position, more than anything, trying to facilitate things, help member states, encourage them. But it's not the EU will say, okay, I will make a regulation to deal with I don't know, the content of history books. That's not how it works. But I think like what matters more, and I think that was more like the overarching goal of the event, of the MEPs there, etc. It's more about more than concrete policies for young people. It was more how to make EU politics relevant for them, how to make them interested in what we do. So I think in that level that was good. And so like my final question, like in the interview was like, oh yeah, okay, what would you recommend MEPs to do to reach out to people, etc. Like, is there anything else beyond what was saying, like go on social media and all that they can do to like make Europe more relevant for young people?
Yeah, a question to me now.
Yeah. I mean, from the top.
Okay. Yeah, so basically, I can maybe just elaborate a little bit the answer that I gave on the show as well. So when I started EU for You, my goal was to encourage people to participate in the European elections. And the underlying idea was to show them that voting is irrelevant because having one or two or three different MEPs in the parliament than before can change a whole policy in one direction or another. And the reason for this is that if you look at a committee, for example, let's say you have, I don't know, 20 or you have 50 people in a committee, and then the vote is going to be decided by a margin of 1 or 2. If this person would have not been voted in, it's going to be different. So I think that this is something that's missing a lot in European communications, not just MEP communications, but European communications in general, that you tell people, look, there are certain files that could not have been decided if it weren't for a small margin of people that made them relevant. And I think it's something that needs to be focused on. So it should be communicated that having one or two extra MEPs in a certain group might shift a whole policy in one direction or another. Because if you give this information to people, then they have a different outlook on things, you know, because then they think, okay, if I manage to campaign together with some others and we raise a few votes in my constituency and we actually change the seat of somebody, in the long run, it might affect the whole policy outcome on the European level. And if you do this, then you actually give people a better understanding of the power dynamics in politics. Of course, this is not going to happen in all votes. I'm not going to pretend that each vote is decided by margins. Very often, it's not the case at all. But those cases exist. And if you make them more tangible, it gives you a better motivation to go out and vote, because it takes away this feeling that all of us very often have, that no matter who we vote for in the grand scheme of things, there's nothing it will influence.
Yeah, actually, we were having a discussion a bit similar to that on Monday when I had an interview with an MEP, Damien Boselager, so he's from the German MEP from Volt, so pan-European party, and he was making like the same kind of point, like to talk when we're talking about the election. Say, yeah, we need to show people that their vote matters. It's not just going to be another face that what they do has a concrete impact on things. And actually, speaking of that, like it makes me think of the EU election. So like apparently it's gonna be formalized next week during the next council meeting. But you know, the parliament is pushing a lot to have like the voting age at 16. Like I think Austria has it at 16, Luxembourg as well.
Yes, they do.
And there's also like a push for the transnational list, the Spitzenkandidat system, and it seems like the member states are going to say, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. So, I mean, something I'm wondering is, given like all the energy that sometimes the parliament and MEPs are pushing, saying, oh yes, we're going to do the transnational list, yes, we're going to do the voting age at 16, and then you have the member state like saying, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. Like, do you think it's something that is like having would backfire with young people say, yeah, but like you're promising lots of stuff, but then in the end nothing happens, so why should I bother in the end?
Well, definitely it will backfire negatively, in my opinion, 100%, because it's also this type of feeling that was mentioned in the chat before, where you say, okay, this is just surface level buzzwords at the end. Okay, it maybe goes a little bit deeper, but I still don't feel that I get a really substantial result out of it. To add, by the way, to Austria, Germany also wants to now, under the new chancellery of Scholz, they also want to do age 16 for European elections. So let's see if this is going to happen. But yes, it's one thing to talk the talk, it's another to walk the walk. There's been so many promises over the years where young people just think at first, oh, wow, this sounds good, this is a positive development for us, and then it doesn't happen the way that it's envisioned. And if this happens too often, then you create a situation where either people walk back completely from politics and just leave it be on its own, which is very dangerous, or they can fall victim to fringe parties, to more extreme parties that tell them, look, nothing is working out, but we have a solution. We will go in a contrarian way against the status quo. And it's a dangerous situation. So this is why it's so important to include young people in the process as much as possible, but include them in a way that is aimed at producing tangible results. Don't just include them for the sake of it, because it doesn't matter if people below the age of, let's say, 30 to 25, whatever you want to include, are in constant exchange. If this exchange doesn't lead to anywhere but words, then is it necessary to do it? I don't think so.
No, I completely agree. And did you follow a bit like the conference on the future of Europe? So it was supposed like to be the this big thing, the big thing where a lot of young people were supposed to be in there. And like, what was your impression in the end? Like, I'm not gonna tell you like what I think yet. I don't want to influence you, but what's your take on the conference?
Well, let me put it this way in terms of how successful it was. When I go out, and my sister is 6 years younger than me, so she's in her early 20s, and there's some cousins that I have that are younger who are between the age of 50 and 23. I asked them all without telling them anything about it, what do you think about the Conference on the Future of Europe? Most of them have never heard of this, you know, and these are people who have either studied, are studying, or who are in general relatively knowledgeable. So it's not something that really went deep into the youth of the European Union beyond a politically interested bubble, in my opinion. And I think this is pretty much all that needs to be said. Like, the things that happened, is everything bad? Of course not. It's good that there is some exchange and there are some relevant events that have been organized. But since it doesn't manage to really expand beyond a bubble and reach people, for example, and I'm saying this with all respect, I don't mean to put anyone down at all. If you are a person who is doing, for example, manual labor as a young person, you know, if you're somebody working, let's say, in a bike shop, whatever, and politics is just not on your everyday radar unless you talk about it with your colleagues, you should be equally, as a young person, reached by these type of events. And I don't have the feeling that this happens. So in my opinion, it's a very, very long way to being successful.
I agree. I mean, I have a pretty similar kind of assessment. Even if, to be fair, the conference was not helped by COVID, because initially in the conference there was supposed to be a whole like dimension with a lot of events taking place in member states, except Hungary, because Hungary didn't want it. But there was supposed to be this more like grassroots kind of thing, which didn't happen, or very little, because of COVID. So we have to be fair as well to that, because they couldn't do it exactly as they wanted. But I agree that indeed, like, it was very much something like for people who were already interested and had very much an opinion, positive or negative, about the EU. So I agree that it failed to break a bit break the bubble and become an actual an actual thing. And then, I mean, it's good that it's a good exercise. It's not perfect, but it's a first step. Then more can be done, and things can be improved. But it's true that it's not exactly the biggest thing. It's not going to change the face of Europe, and that's also a reproach I was making to it, because I feared it was a bit over-promising, in the sense that it was advertised as being like, oh, you see, you're gonna change everything you want, we're gonna do it. Which everyone know. I mean, everyone who knows a bit about the EU knew that was not going to happen. I mean, we knew that the council would have preferred to die. The council went in there literally with the gun to their head. They didn't want any of it. So it's, I mean, for me, it was a bit of a dangerous game, because it could have ended up being like a machine to create frustration, because you overpromise and in the end you can't deliver even like 10% of what you're promising. So that's a bit.
I can share a story related to this. Last year, I was invited to go to Strasbourg in 2021, because this was the European Year of Youth, and I was invited with a group of 7 others who are content creators in the EU, not just on politics. They're also doing content on like medical things, on fashion, which was good in my opinion, because in order to reach people outside the bubble, you need to go into other fields, not just politics. And we even had a meeting with the president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. We had a meeting with Katharina Barley, one of the vice presidents of the European Parliament, and some other MEPs. So this was a good kickoff. This was during the State of the Union speech on that day. So it was a good kickoff, and I thought, okay, it might be promising. But as the year progressed, I felt like the communication was reaching more and more just the bubble, as I mentioned before. It didn't really manage to expand beyond. And again, what are the most pressing issues for young people? If you just look at the polling, it's things like climate change. And if you look at what happened on a policy level in this, it's not something that made young people happy. Otherwise, we wouldn't have continuous protests, etc. So if you call a conference a conference on the future of Europe, and basically with the name itself, create the illusion that this is something where you have a lot of power, and now overnight essentially young people can take it into their own hands and shape the future, and then you see the results in terms of policies which are going against the demands of the youth. Whether they're good or bad, that's up to everybody to decide on their own. But if it goes against them, then realistically it's not going to have a good aftertaste.
No, of course. I mean, then since you were saying like, yeah, they make proposals, and then the matter is if it's good or bad, it's up to discussion. Like the problem also is a bit the format, is that the way it was shaped. Because then, I mean, if you consider that whatever the conference comes up with has to become law, then why do we even need a European Parliament? I mean, that's also a question. It's sure people can come up with ideas. But doesn't mean necessarily that they are necessarily good ideas, that they're not too simplistic or too complicated and all that. I mean, I did a bunch of streams like looking at the proposals of the conference on Europe, and also the ones on the online platform that they had, which didn't have a lot of success, unfortunately for them. I mean, it was a bit sad.
Yeah.
But it's like you look at that and you're like, yeah, but no. I mean, half of the things that you're proposing, either they don't exist or sometimes they don't even make sense. I'm like, but do they have a lawyer? Do they have someone to tell them that it makes absolutely no sense what they're asking? So that's also I think like something to be said, not about young people and their involvement with EU, but more about like this whole idea of direct democracy and deliberative democracy, because like there are limits with the exercise. Just not because you put hundreds of young people into an hemicycle and tell them, oh, okay, give us a proposal, that's it's going to solve the problem, or it's going to be necessarily great what they propose. I mean, ultimately, young people can also have bad ideas. They don't have.
And I think what's clear is that at least pretty much everybody I speak to, nobody is against the idea of the conference. Everybody is supportive of the idea that you include young people. It's just the framework and like the branding of it, and how you realize it actually. Like, don't overpromise. Tell people realistically and concretely what can happen, what can't happen, and operate within that frame. Because if you go beyond the scope, it can backfire tremendously. And this is something that has to do also with, and it comes down to the national level. How well on the national level are people educated about the European Union, what it can do, what it can't do? Because this is something I can speak about from my perspective as somebody who's running an EU like educational platform. Very, very often I get comments or questions about things where people would like to see a change on the EU level, myself included, and I think it would be great to have changes in certain areas, but there are things that fall into national competency. So what can you do, It doesn't matter, unfortunately, if we want to see the change, because if we want to, then we have to lobby on the national level. And if you don't have this knowledge as a prerequisite, it's going to be quite difficult to convince people that the conference makes sense in many areas.
That's a bit the paradox of the EU in a sense, like because people are aware of the EU. I think at this stage everyone knows that the EU is out there and can do legislation and all that. I think that ironically Brexit helped a bit on that. But at the same time, like I feel like the EU is held to standards that are national government standards. Like they expect that the EU can do the same thing as a national government, and so they say, oh yeah, but why isn't the EU doing that? Why isn't the EU doing this, etc.? And the problem is that the EU is not a state. It's an international organization. It has a limited set of competencies. Even if the EU, I mean, again, it's the problem also of over-promising. The EU loves to present itself as almost a de facto state, but it's not a state. It doesn't have the power of a state. So it's sometimes you have to say, yeah, but the EU actually can't do that. And it's a bit sometimes complicated to explain to people. But I mean, why can't the EU do that? I don't get it. You're doing regulation, you're doing laws, you can impose laws on 27 on 27 countries, and you're telling me that you can't make a law on this? That makes no sense, because it could make sense at European level, etc., etc. So sometimes I feel it's a bit complicated. It makes the task more complicated for the EU, because it's judged on standards that are not the standard it should be judged with. That's a bit, if it makes sense. I don't know, but
Yeah. No, for me, very often when I look at certain PR campaigns, I'm thinking I would be happy to see the same amount of both funding and effort going into educational campaigns where people are really across their educational background informed about how the EU functions. Because in order to be able to make a change, you need to understand the system that you're trying to change. And as long as this is not given, it's going to be very difficult, and it's a very fertile ground for many frustrations. Because one big thing that's something I'm extremely passionate about as well is the field of migration. So if you don't know that many of the things happening in the migration sphere are decided, sadly, on the national level, and there is no chance to do it on the European level, it's going to be just a minefield of frustration. No matter where you look, you think, okay, why isn't the EU doing anything? And there's only so many things it can do. And it's also only as good or as bad as the sum of all of its part. If you have governments that are going against what you wish for, they will veto certain things in the council, so it will be blocked on the European level. And you need to know that. And you need to know where to concentrate your efforts on. Do you concentrate your efforts on the European level? In some areas, absolutely, it's very necessary and it can be complementary. But if you do it exclusively on the EU level because you expect change when it's about a field that is relevant on a national level, it's not going to yield the result that you want to see. So many times I'm wondering if the EU is not misplacing some of its funds for its PR campaigns when they should be doing educational campaigns. Because if you give people the power of knowledge how to actually participate and where to activate their efforts, it could yield a better result.
And like speaking of that, like if you can do like literally anything, like you have unlimited money, no one can tell you anything, you decide anything. What do you do, like, to make to get young people interested in the EU? Like, what should the EU do to make it interesting for young people?
Yeah, I mean, you need to look at where young people are looking to themselves. Whether it's certain sports, whether it's creative fields like music, videos, etc. You need to identify basically what's cool for young people, what's something they enjoy doing, and then start there. Don't just look only at the politically interested ones. Of course, don't forget them. It's important to cater to this audience too. But if you know that millions of people are following a certain person who is completely outside of this politics world, try to get them engaged in a completely like non-partisan, objective way, and find some type of collaboration potential to just at least post some links or host some events together where there's a pull. Because the EU in itself, it doesn't have this pull. It doesn't have this interest from itself. The European Commission is not something people think about and act like, oh wow, this is exactly like my favorite singer or my favorite
it's not sexy.
movie star or whatever. I'm gonna go there. Exactly, it isn't. It's very technical. So you need to go where young people are going and then include them. And before this background, I can also say that I know the people working on like influencer connections in the Commission and the Parliament quite well. And there are efforts and they are expanding. So they are going beyond the political field. They are reaching out to persons who, for example, have their own fashion brand that people are liking, and they invite them to the European Parliament, to the Commission, to post content for their audience that is usually not exposed to this type of stuff. So that's a good start. But it needs to be expanded. And I don't know if you followed the case or covered it recently. There was a small scandal about the EU investing 387,000 euros into hosting an event on the metaverse.
Oh yes, we talked at length about it.
Yeah, I mean, not even people who are like in their 30s, 40s are interested in the metaverse. Young people aren't at all. Why do you do stuff like this? It's just insane to me that you invest nearly 400,000 in this type of stuff. Because imagine what kind of what kind of content you could create with this money if you gave it as a just traveling budget, accommodation budget to people who are outside of this bubble, invite them to come to the EU, meet with people, etc. But this is what happens when you get people in positions of decision-making power on this topic who are not really in touch with what young people find interesting, you know? And this is why it's so important to have better campaigns, because if you get somebody who's more like who's coming from a creative background, who's really interested in youth culture and like subcultures and in general youth culture, and if you get them in a communications position, it will be easier for them to identify how do I address a group that is not interested in politics. But if you don't manage to put these people in the positions, these are results that you get, unfortunately.
Yeah, but I mean, we talked at length about this issue over the past few weeks, indeed, on the channel, and I had like a couple of former people, communication people who used to work in the commission there, and yeah, you could see they were a bit frustrated sometimes, but I mean, I still think that there is progress on that. I mean,
there is progress.
I've seen like a lot of thanks for the follow. There was a lot of change I saw like since. I mean, I've been working in Brussels since 2013. Like the level of communication, of online communication, youth communication that you see today is uncomparable to what was the case 10 years ago. Like and I'm talking like institution, I'm talking political groups. Like you see a lot of progress. You see that these young people are getting to position where they get to be creative, etc. And you also see that from an institutional point of view, the institutions are less afraid to go out there. They have integrated this kind of tools as into their everyday thing. They're like, okay, we're gonna go there, we're gonna do things, and yeah, sometimes works, sometimes doesn't work. Like to be fair on the metaverse thing, like I find it very weird, this whole thing. I'm not like blaming the commission for trying to do something on the metaverse. On the contrary, I think it's good to an extent that they are trying to do something while it's still not super trending, that they're testing the waters here, seeing and all that. But I really don't see why did they do a metaverse on a global gateway. Why organize an online party for that? Like for me, there's a complete dissonance. Like it makes no sense. There's no link between the metaverse in itself and the topic it's supposed to be about. Like if they would have done the metaverse in the context of the 2024 elections, like to explain things about the EU, okay, why not? But that's not the case. So it's super weird. Like the people he's supposed to target, it's not the metaverse is there. Like why a metaverse for that? It makes no sense. There's no coherence. I would say.
And not with a budget, you know. I'm all for trying to test new waters, but there's a difference between testing the waters and investing 387,000 for this if you don't know what you're doing, you know. So yeah. My problem is that the budgeting. My problem is not that they did it. It's just the amount of resources that were allocated to this. But I wanted to pick up on something that you said, that how they're collaborating with influencers, with youth in general, now versus before. I have to say I 100,000% agree, because I'm personally getting invited a lot to many things that I would have not seen possible even back in 2010 when I was living in Brussels and working in the European Parliament myself. So there's a big progress. And one thing that I would like to underline, because you need to give the EU credit where it's due. For example, there are some topics that I talk very critically about on my channel, such as the horrible deaths that we've seen over the past years at the EU borders, etc. So it's something that's not a pleasant topic for the EU, and it's definitely not good PR for it. But despite this, I'm getting invited. For example, when I went to Strasbourg last year, I was also given the chance to choose freely what I want to say, and as a video basically, which is going to be published on the Instagram channel of the European Parliament. And this was all done, or when I had the chance to meet with Ursula von der Leyen and the Vice President of the European Parliament and some other MEPs, there were zero strings attached from the organizational side of things. So the European Parliament team did not tell me, you're not allowed to say this, you're not allowed to ask about this, etc. It was a very open invitation, because they knew, okay, I'm creating content in this area. It's reaching people beyond the politics bubble. Go in, do whatever you want, basically, and then we're going to see what's going to come out of it. And this is a level of like control that they're giving up, which was not really something that they did before. Before, it had to be very, very, very controlled, organized, and they had to know essentially what was going to be the outcome as realistically as you can predict it, of course. But they're really letting go of that and allowing more people into the space, which I think is healthy because it's a democracy. We need to have diverse opinions represented, and this is a very good development, in my opinion.
No, I agree. I mean, that's this kind of thing. The fact that they don't like, there's no string attached. I think is the kind of thing that let's say makes it not let's make it like actual communication rather than like a calm kind of thing, because like it's then you ask the question and then it's up for the EU to prove its worth. I mean, it's fair game. You answer, and then the people will judge you on that answer. That's political accountability, and that's a good thing, I would say. But yeah, I mean, how many things have you been invited? Because I didn't get invited to the von der Leyen thing, so I'm getting jealous. I will send a message to the commission and say I want my time with von der Leyen as well.
Yeah.
I don't think I will.
Next time I'm asked for something, I'll include you in the CC and see what happens. But one thing that I wanted to mention, because I think it might be interesting for people to get a little bit of information about the background of these events, because there's one thing that you see and then there's the things that are happening behind it. So after the event was done, I was, as I said, in a group of 8 or 7 people in total. And we were asked to also provide some data insights of our different social media accounts so that they can see how many people are reached and like what type of gender balances there are, in which countries people are reached. And this data is collected in order to provide a more, for the next events that are going to follow, to provide a more diverse like outreach strategy. You know, it's not just that they're inviting people and then let it be, but they're actually looking into the like they're looking into the data, they're looking into the analytics, and then they're then calculating, does it actually make sense to collaborate in this area? Should we go somewhere else? So there are some very talented and smart people working there too. And as I said, I know them personally, I collaborated with them, and I can say that they're doing the job professionally. Whether somebody likes the influencers that were invited or not, that's up to everyone to decide. But it would be wrong to say that they're not looking at it from a professional, diverse perspective.
No, definitely, I agree with that. I'm looking at the time. I don't want to keep you too much because it's been already quite some time. So unless there's a question that pops up right now in the chat, I'll give you actually the final word. Like on the topic of EU and youth, what would be your conclusion, your advice, and these kind of things to reconnect a bit the two of them?
Yeah. The topic of EU and youth, my final word would be that whatever feelings you have about it, try to channel it into something productive. If you have frustrations, which are very, very understandable in many areas, channel those and try to transform them into action, whether that is you corresponding with the MEP representing your constituency, whether that is you asking questions to people working in a certain policy field in the commission and you ask them why did something happen the way it did, whether it's participating in NGOs, communicating with national politicians. Try to channel it into something productive, and ideally do it together with others, because an individual voice is not strong enough, of course. But if you manage to find other people, and chances are there are other people, because very often when young people are frustrated or also excited about something, you will find many others who share the same feelings. Try to connect with them. The internet is a beautiful tool for that. And then try to organize something and do it in an organized manner, because the more people reach out to somebody, the harder it gets to ignore it. So this is my biggest advice. Don't let it eat you up. And I know it can be extremely frustrating. I've been there myself, that I felt like I'm screaming or acting into the void with zero results. But every now and then you have some light shining through this political darkness, where you see, wow, it actually makes sense to get active. It actually makes sense to correspond to people. So that's my final word and advice. Just be active and try to connect with like-minded people, and then act on your ideas.
Well, that makes perfect sense to me. So thank you, Marcos, again for coming tonight and to participate to the event as well. I mean, I hope that you enjoyed the experience. I hope that you, chat audience, you enjoyed as well the experience, the event and all that. I hope that I'll get to do that as well in the future as well. I'd like also to thank again Euranet Plus for helping me to organize this. And yeah, I wish you all a good evening, and yeah, I will see you. Oh yeah, of course, don't forget to follow the channel. I posting the socials there. You can follow. You can find as well Marcos on Twitter and on Instagram. On Instagram, you'll find him with the EU for You. So you will find. I posted on it on the Discord and on Instagram, so you can find him through there. So of course, don't hesitate to follow him through that. And yeah, I wish you all a good evening, and I will see you next week for an interview and for the end of season event. So be sure to come back. Have a good one, guys. Thanks, Marcos, again.